IVM. Whether we live in joint or nuclear families, disagreements and conflicts with our own parents and in laws over our parenting are common. In this episode, we'll discuss how the way we handle conflicts impacts our kids and how we can prevent these conflicts or at least prevent them from escalating.
Almost every job in the world requires training, except parenting.
You need to learn parenting on the job, and that can be really hard.
Here on Big Talk about tiny humans, we want to help you navigate the world of parenting better and make your lives a little bit easier.
Hi, I'm Meghna.
And hi, I'm Devishobha.
Every week, we bring you the best research on parenting,
Top tips from experts,
and actionable strategies to confront the numerous challenges that all parents and educators face.
So let's get started, shall we?
I've seen so many cases of late in therapy of couples having these massive conflicts. And what's the issue? Grandparents interfering in their parenting. And this causes a ripple effect on the couple's own relationship, their own mental health. The impact it has on the kids is, of course, another ballgame altogether. And I think, especially because of the pandemic, the relationships of all types have become strained. Being stuck inside our homes, constantly staring at each other's faces, lack of physical and emotional space is just causing tension in our relationships that were already sensitive to begin with. Having these conflicts is natural, no, Shobha? But let's talk about how and when these conflicts start to become unhealthy.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, Meghna. There is absolutely no relationship in this world that is without conflicts, be it mother-child, be it husband-wife, be it mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, the infamous relationship, of course, brother, sister, two friends, colleagues, everyone, right? So it's just, there's no relationship at all that doesn't have conflict. But I think conflict is good in many ways, but the way we handle conflict is what makes it sometimes unbearable for even at that moment, and even later sometimes it just ends up spoiling the relationship altogether. And I think the way we handle the conflict is the most important thing, and the way we end up handling the conflict are in can be broadly put into four different categories. One is complain, of course, that we have been wronged somehow in this entire conflict situation, that the other party was wrong, to have blamed us, and we are completely innocent, we had nothing to do, which could be the case sometimes. But then constant bickering about the situation, about especially the blame on the other person, is what damages a relationship. And when it comes to children, like you said, you mentioned a great point, that the impact that it has on the children, right, that is something that is very, very immeasurable. That is, even without our knowing, it happens a lot, it impacts them a lot. And it happens because children are very, very highly equipped to read emotional signals, much more than we parents understand or even know that they are capable of, right? Emotional signals can be read very easily, and sometimes the result is that they end up becoming emotionally distant from everybody in the house because they just cannot tolerate the constant conflicts, right? And the other way that we usually end up handling conflict is we put barriers. We say that, what, don't go. I mean, we had a conflict, and abhi mat jao unke paas, just stop talking to them till this conflict is resolved. Do not correspond with the other party. And children are simply not equipped to handle that kind of.
You mean when parents tell their children about their grandparents that you're not supposed to go and talk to them?
Yeah, grandparents. Yes, absolutely. I mean, what has the child got to do with it? It's a conflict between two adults. Just keep the child out of it, right? Don't say, don't talk to the other party just because I'm having a conflict with them. You are adults. Children don't have anything to do with that, right? Yeah. And the third thing is, and this is quite human, and I think, even though I may sound a little, I don't know, gender biased, but I think we women do it a lot. We just cannot let go of the past. We try to dig up the past in every kind of a situation. So I think just letting go of the past and talking about just that particular situation to resolve it, I think that is something that we need to learn, but we end up digging up the past a lot more. And what happens is that it escalates the situation just beyond whatever it was. Like sometimes we see that a mountain blows out from a molehill, typical situations. And that happens just because we cannot let go of the past. We keep digging up. तुमने तब भी ऐसे ही किया था, तुम हमेशा ऐसे ही करते हो, all that. So,
actually,
the
Shubha,
generalism.
I see couples for therapy, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of the golden rules in marital therapy,
Right.
that if you're having a conflict, do not
Yeah.
bring up the past.
Absolutely.
Because that's the first thing that comes out when you're trying to attack and blame, as you said, the other person. So the
Yeah.
first thing, oh, but you did this then and you did
Yeah.
that then. And
Yeah.
stick to the issue right now. And I get couples to fight with each other.
Yeah.
And then I sort of tell them that, you know what, now you have to replay that fight without bringing up the past. And
Yeah.
they're like, okay, what do we say now?
Wow, that's nice. Yeah, exactly. So the escalation happens just because it all, adds up. And
Yeah.
most of the times it's just like, that last straw, right? You've just like, kept tolerating a lot and suddenly it's like too much, right? So I think this is also another thing. Talking about the conflict just, at the moment for the situation
Yeah.
alone will actually diffuse a lot of it. You're
Yeah.
not keeping up pent up emotions, right? So that is a big thing. And then I think the last thing that we all unconsciously do is judging behavior and judging the child's behavior, especially based on some preconceived notions of the adults. Like, for example, now we discussed that, we tend to kind of generalize behaviors, right? Tum hamesha aise hi karte ho, so that happens, that becomes like a behavioral trait, a characteristic trait of some person, some adult in the family. And now suddenly you are now judging the child's behavior, saying, tum bilkul apni dadi pe gayi ho, or tum bilkul apni maa pe gayi ho. Something, your conflict counterpart is suddenly, becomes a judging point for the child, and the child is now suddenly confused. So what? Okay, my dadi, my ma. So yeah, I'm supposed to be a part of them, right? So it's all very confusing and too much for the child, right? So yeah.
But it also, I think, teaches the kids that it's acceptable to talk about the people they love in such an insensitive and insulting manner.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
Think,
yeah, it's definitely very insensitive. And it's sometimes people don't realize the kind of burden that puts on the child. The child is not equipped to take sides, shouldn't have to take sides. Right?
Yeah. And if the child is forced to take sides, ultimately it can actually even have an impact on the child's self-esteem.
Absolutely.
And interfere with the child's ability to form healthy relationships in the future. So we're definitely not doing our kids any favors.
No, absolutely not.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to Aman Gupta, CMO and co-founder of Boat. They discuss how Aman built a profitable brand via a thorough understanding of his consumers and his experiences as one of the sharks on Shark Tank India. On Paisa Vaisa, Shinjini Kumar, co-founder of the My Salt app, debunks various myths around women and finance with Anupam. On The Longest Constitution, Priya raises important questions in this Republic Day special episode. She compares the current state of our country to the vision of the Constitution that was formulated 73 years ago. The Pulyabazi hosts contemplate how to celebrate Republic Day in their new series, Ek Sawal Kahin Jawab. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina teaches us how to say no and create healthy boundaries. Also, just one quick announcement for everybody. We would like you to check out the new version of our Android app. It's available on the Play Store. It's a really interesting take on how to listen to podcasts. Do give it a look and let us know what you think. We're open to feedback on all of our social media channels. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth really does help. And don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. And we have a number of channels there at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube where you can take a look at them. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back. Now, Shobha, let's discuss how we can handle these conflicts. I reckon there's no easy way out, because, they're rocky waters. So what do you think are some of the top tips that we can share with our listeners for managing these conflicts?
Yeah, I think some of the things that I can think from the top of my head are, one is, if you are a family unit, right? just like any other unit. For example, if you're working in a corporate setting, you have some corporate policies, some rules. In a school for the child, there are some rules to follow. Similarly, in a family also deserves to follow some rules, some protocols, right? Because there are so many other people, so many people, members forming a unit. So people will have priorities. So setting family protocols is very, very important according to me, and it plays a major role in conflict management. And especially for the person who is at home the most, the person who is interacting with the other people the most, usually the women. Of course, there are many men also doing it now, but usually the women, if there is a lot of confusion about roles, and if there is only one particular kind of expectation, from the person who is spending the most time at home, or the person who is taking the most responsibility for the other people at home, protocols are very, very important. For example, if there is a cooking schedule, if there is something that needs to be done, then having an understanding about these rules or these protocols is, it makes life so much easier. Right? So family protocols is one. Then align family values. So if you have a value, for example, if I have a value that I believe in, for example, I believe in hard work, right? And if I have to inculcate that in my child, then I will do certain things according to my values. Now, if the other people in the family cannot understand where my actions are coming from, then it's important to let the other people know that my families are where my actions are coming from, and I want to really align my actions with my values. And that eventually becomes a family value as well, because I'm an important member of the family, right? So I think communicating that is very important. First of all, understanding your values, aligning your actions, and then aligning your communication to the values and the actions is very important. And the third thing, I think, Meghna, is leaving core decisions of parenting to parents alone. This may not be an issue in some families, but in many families, it's still a very important issue, because sometimes we see that parents are not able to believe that now I am an adult and I am supposed to take responsibility for another human or other humans, right? Sometimes it happens. And then also the other side, where grandparents still think that their adult children are still children and they still need to do many things for them. It's not so on both sides. So
they need to do many things for them is okay. But the problem is when the grandparents expect that my adult children will still do things that according to me, even in their parenting. So
yeah, that is true. And whether we like it or not, it happens a lot. But I think, again, communication is paramount here. And I think the beginning should come from the parents themselves rather than the grandparents, I would say, because I think parents should really own up to the fact that, okay, now I'm responsible not only for my children, but also for myself, right? So take responsibility for myself and communicate. Wherever communication needs to happen, please communicate, right? So that one. And then work towards creating a culture of respect. Now, you brought up a very important, very beautiful point, where you said that sometimes grandparents think that even though the parents are now adults, they need to do, or they are expected to do a lot of things according to what I expect them to do. It is not necessarily so, right? We all know that. If you have lived with two or more people, necessarily that conflicts will happen. You need not agree on anything. In fact, too much agreement is not good. You have to disagree, right? If you're agreeing on everything, then there's something wrong, right? But again, communicating, that with the priority of building a culture of respect around that communication, right? And making it a point that not agreeing to something is not disrespecting, right? It's not equal to disrespecting. I just don't agree with what you're saying. That doesn't mean I don't respect you. That doesn't mean I want to disrespect you. I have my reasons and I want you to listen to my reasons. I will listen to your reasons, right? So when you do that, I think children absorb it naturally. You don't have to teach them to be respectful. So they understand that respect and disagreement are two different things. Disagreement is about thinking independently, weighing your options. Respect is about communicating properly. So these are two different things, right? So I think if we have these 4 pillars all set up in a family unit, then conflicts can reduce to a great extent, is what I think.
I love that. I love that, Shobha, especially this bit about, understanding that, I'm responsible for the things that I take up, right? And not necessarily because, in a lot of families, what I've also seen is that parents implicitly are expecting the grandparents to, take care of the children. And yet at the same time, there is the conflict happening because the parent wants things to be done in a certain way and the grandparent wants things to be done in a completely opposite way. And that's where a
Right.
lot of clashes occur. I'm reminded of this uh, very, very, it was very horrific to me actually. So you also talked about values, right?
Right.
So I value, as a person, I value health and healthy eating a lot. And the time when, so I had a nanny for my daughter, and I was leaving her and going to work for the first time, and she was barely like 9 months old. And I had given all the instructions to nanny. So it was not like my mother-in-law was expected to take care of my child. That was never in the plan. But she wanted to sort of take over and, all of that. And when I came back from work that day, I saw her feeding my child biscuits dipped in tea. And I got the biggest shock of my life. I was so shocked that I could not speak. And I was like, oh my God, like I was screaming inside. I was like, this is like completely against my values. This is completely against anything that I want for my child. This is not even something I've instructed my nanny to do. How could my mother-in-law do something like that? It was such a shock for me. So anyway, so I mean, I just got reminded of, I actually didn't handle it. I just remained quiet. I think I should have, as you said, open communication goes a long way. I teach the same thing to my clients in therapy as well.
Yeah.
Should have spoken up, I guess, but I didn't. But oh my God, that was one incident that I still sends shivers down my spine. And of course, after that, I made sure that such a thing never repeats itself again. But it's a struggle, right? I mean, it's an uphill struggle. And this is just one of the examples, right? I'm sure my mother-in-law also has many, many examples to give from her side, right? So which brings me really to the point that, these are tough conversations, right? These are, I mean, the reason why I did not have that conversation with my mother-in-law is it was a tough conversation, right? It would have probably involved a lot of confrontation, a lot of negotiation with somebody who, we love or don't. And it's difficult to approach these conversations with a calm and clear head, especially because your values are involved, your child is involved. So let's quickly talk about how we can actually have these difficult conversations.
I think you're right. And most of us avoid these confrontations, avoid these conflicts just because it is so difficult to, you just don't want that, you just don't, sometimes you just don't have the energy. But, this can really become easy, if we follow a 5-point agenda, as I call it. It's called gives. Okay. I would say set a goal for your conversation whenever you are in a conflict situation and you know that you need to talk it out. Then you start with a goal in your mind. Okay, what is my goal of this conversation? I definitely do not want to come out of it having a fight. Right. Then 2 is know their intention behind their action, understand why they did what they did. Right. 3 is validate their feelings. Now, if I have to go back to your example of, how you could have taken the conversation forward, your goal could have been, just to make her understand that you do not want your child having tea with biscuits. That is not a snack option for your child. That is your goal. That is your goal. That is your goal, is to make her understand that. Right.
Yeah.
Now, the second is your second point is to know why she did what she did. Perhaps she did it because your daughter did not have a good lunch that day, right? Maybe she just wanted to fill her up with something, let her eat something at least, right? Most of us do that, right? Okay, kuch to khane do. Okay, instead of. So sometimes it just doesn't go well with us, but that might be their intention.
No, but that was actually, I think I know that. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
definitely her intention that, she didn't eat. She was a very, very poor eater. And at
Exactly.
least wo nahi kha rahi, to wo kha legi,
Yeah,
types,
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So now that you know their intention, now you definitely are not that angry anymore. Okay, now you know, okay, she meant well. Okay, maybe she didn't do the right thing. Okay, but she meant well. So now it becomes easier for you to validate also. Now you understand, okay, their intentions are good. Maybe she didn't have a choice. So now it's easier for you to open up and say, okay, thank you for thinking of it that way. Okay, I completely understand, but can we come up with something else? Can we do something else? So that is validation. So after this point, there is no possibility of a conflict continuing, because
because what will they can't have a comeback. No.
Yeah,
if I tell my mother-in-law, see, I understand, I get it,
Yeah.
if I'm coming from a place of understanding, what will she say? That's so true, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the E that we say, this is exactly where you explain to them that, okay, this behavior is not very well aligned with my values, but neither is it with your intention, right? You wanted well for her, but this is not necessarily what happened, right? So it opens up the flow to explain that, right? And then S is, actually coming to a common solution. Maybe then you could have come up with some homemade. You are a good baker, so maybe you could have come up with homemade biscuits, that your daughter would have liked as a snack, or maybe some kind of a common other snack, like a bread or something that she would like, right? So that would have, and you could have told your mother-in-law that, in the event of this happening again, please offer her this, right? So that's a common solution, and now there is no conflict, right? So now it's a beautiful way to resolve. So I think these 5-point agenda works for any kind of situation, and it's just basically understanding the other's perspective. And even in marketing classes, I think this is what we are taught, right?
No, absolutely, I love that. Give. So G for goal, I for intention, V for validate, E for explain, S for solve. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I hope all of us are able to apply gives to tough conversations with our kids' grandparents, whether they're our own parents or in-laws, and have these tough conversations and, handle conflicts with them so that parenting becomes easier and those conflicts don't end up adversely impacting our kids. So thanks so much, Shobha. This was very insightful. So that's our episode for today. Thank you for listening to Big Talk About Tiny Humans, our podcast for parents and educators.
Hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to share it with your friends and family.
Listen and subscribe to Big Talk About Tiny Humans on the IVM Podcasts app, website, and all major audio platforms. We are available everywhere.
You can follow us on social media and online. Meghna is at The Therapist Mommy on Instagram and YouTube. And you can check out her website, raisingfamilyacademy.com, for a transformative course on raising a child with emotional intelligence.
And Devishobha is at Kidskintha on Twitter and Instagram. And check out kidskintha.com for in-depth articles and events on parenting and child development.
While you're at it, do also check out other great shows from the IVM Podcasts network at shows.ivmpodcasts.com. And IVM is on social media at IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
We'll catch you again on our next episode.
If you're a cricket fan, check out Edges and Sledges, India's favorite cricket podcast.
The podcast focuses on Indian cricket, the IPL, and has a ton of banter both on and off the field.
We talk about the week's biggest cricket stories with current and ex-international cricketers, coaches, or sometimes just between us.
And it's hosted by me, DJ.
Me, Varun.
And me, Ashwin.
New episodes release every week.
You can catch us on the IVM Podcasts website, app,
or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast.
What if you could relive some of the biggest and most public feuds in Indian corporate history?
Peer back through the window of time to see who among HUL or Nirma stood on top.
Or who was more dominant between Tata Motors and Maruti Suzuki?
Tune in with me, Ambi Parmeshwaran.
And me, Anupam Gupta, on Bank of Baroda presents The Last Brand Standing.
where we talk about two brands vying for the top position.
And what their journeys were.
Every Tuesday on the IVM Podcast app or website.
Or wherever you get your podcast from.